I have a technical problem, it's probably not a bad idea.
Paul, I've got a third-party app going, recording the meeting as well. So,
okay.
Amy, are you recording?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to, just because I'm hosting and I don't want to lock up. So
Sounds great.
I just want to be clear about that.
All right, let's start letting people in.
Also, if anyone needs to be co-host and I have not, please text me. Apparently I have the only rights to do that, which is not how I remembered it. But
Do we just want to hit admit all, or are you doing people by name?
Let's admit everybody.
let's do it.
All right, here we go.
All right, hi folks, thanks for signing in. We're gonna wait just a couple more minutes while we let people in from the waiting room. Appreciate you guys putting up with some few extra controls so we can avoid the bomb, the Zoom bomb. You all know what I'm talking about.
See Darren Mano's name.
Hey, terrific. And folks we know, feel free to ask them to start video. Just because it's so pleasant to see faces of people we love.
I do apologize for my shiny forehead. There's nothing I can do about it. So maybe there's a powder or something I can apply sometime, but cat, that's the way to do it. Tara, I just don't look nearly as good as you and a cat. So that's not probably going to happen.
Hey, Detective Meiser, it is super cool to see you. Hey, Jesse Hulse. Okay, Paul, should we get started? Are we still letting people in?
There are still some people arriving. Let's give
some
it one more
important
minute
people.
and then go for it. I always say the sooner we start, the sooner that we can end. So
You're no fun, Paul.
I know. Come on, Paul. Be cool.
Thursday night is karaoke night at a lot of bars. People have places to go.
I just got a message that Andrew Johnston is having trouble opening the Zoom meeting.
I just let him in. So
Oh, well, okay. Glad that worked out.
Amy, you have 70 some plus participants. I say go ahead and get started.
Okay, sure. All right, folks. Sorry, I just tried to share my PowerPoint slides and my entire screen, both of them simultaneously went black. That's exciting. So we won't go full screen. That's maybe not the way to go. All right. See anything, folks?
It's showing up.
Hey, neat. Okay, well, thank you for joining us tonight. This is the Ballpark and Central Ninth Community Councils. We're having a virtual town hall, and we're really pulling this together on the fly, as you can tell. But we are interested in engaging the community about the Brooklyn Avenue Overflow Shelter, which, you know, just like you guys, we learned about this 2 weeks ago through an article in the Salt Lake Tribune. So thank goodness for the Salt Lake Tribune coverage. Please actually subscribe to your local paper. Apparently it makes a really big difference for finding out about these sorts of things. But so through this article, we discovered that 252 Brooklyn Avenue, which is currently a detox center and run by the Volunteers of America, Utah, a committee, a state level committee called the Utah Homelessness Council had voted to buy this property from the Volunteers of America, Utah, so that it could be turned into a homeless overflow shelter. Needless to say, this really surprised a lot of us because everybody who's on this call, who's attended years worth of community council meetings, knows that whenever we've had a homeless resource center or some other kinds of services like in that vein proposed to the community, there's been an extensive amount of community outreach. People might go away unhappy, but we all attended months of meetings about siting the homeless shelters, what kind of architectural features would the new homeless resource centers have in them, what was debated and eventually let go, what side of the building would the entrance be on. These were details that we were all involved with. So finding out 2 weeks ago that we were going to get an overflow shelter in the neighborhood was really incredibly surprising. Other things about this location, 222 West Brooklyn Avenue, it's quite close to Jefferson Park. And I know that there are some folks on tonight who are part of the Friends of Jefferson Park group. It's less than a quarter of a mile away. And those of you who've been in Ballpark meetings earlier this year may recognize that it's also immediately adjacent to this previously abandoned railroad right-of-way track, but UTA, the Utah Transit Authority, has just initiated a study about reactivating this railway line, but currently it is not being used by trains, maybe eventually. So besides the article in the Salt Lake Tribune, the way that we've been able to find out about how this process came to be is merely just listening to the recording of the meeting from August 25th. You yourself can go and download the recording yourself by going on to utah.gov and digging through the Utah Homelessness Council files. I encourage you to do so. It's informative. And there's a listing of publicly available files from that meeting. So you can listen to, did anybody at the meeting have any objections to this decision? Some people did, but the council did unanimously vote to move forward with the recommendation to buy this homeless resource, or pardon me, to buy this detox center to then turn it into a shelter. I think it's important to note that the shelter will not be available until winter 21-22. So not this winter, next winter. My internet connection's unstable. That's cool. But the next stage in the process is a state level. The Executive Appropriations Committee is going to vote on whether or not to issue the $3 million for this purchase on Tuesday afternoon. So I strongly encourage those of you who are interested to consider going to this meeting and contacting your legislators in advance. If you know anybody on this committee, and I know that you will know some of the names in this group, please feel free to contact them. I wish I had more to share with you, and we had invited the Volunteers of America to give our neighborhood a presentation about their proposal, but Kathy Bray, the president of the VOA, has told us that she would not be available to do so, and nobody else from their organization would be an appropriate speaker. Oh, thank you. Let's see. Now that I stopped sharing my screen, I can see some comments that have been to me. George Chapman suggests that signing up to make a public comment at the Appropriations Committee meeting requires signing up the day before. Good tip, George. Thank you. We also reached out to the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness, and they were going to give a presentation today, but they said that they would not be prepared to answer community questions. And we responded that it would be a little bit unusual to host a presentation without willing to be, with a speaker being unwilling to answer community questions. And so they declined to come to our meeting today, to my knowledge. So what we thought we would do is invite our legislators to this meeting so they could hear about folks' concerns. And we also thought we would talk about some of our immediate concerns about this proposal. And the one that you may have read about today in the Salt Lake Tribune, they published an op-ed that I wrote. One of the reasons why we're quite concerned that there was no community outreach before this decision was reached is because there are already 238 units of affordable housing planned for that same block of Brooklyn Avenue. They are located across the street from the VOA Detox Center. These units of affordable housing have financing. They presented to the Ballpark Community Council months ago, and they've been approved by the Planning Commission. But we have George Hauser, the developer of this project, on the call, and he's going to give us a brief overview of that. And our understanding and his understanding is that financing for the affordable housing would fall through if this overflow shelter does move forward. George, are you prepared to talk about Brooklyn Avenue projects?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
All right.
Let's see, can I share my screen? Can you
Can
share?
you?
Sorry, yes, you should be able to. I was on mute.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
We're going to make you co-host so you have magical powers, George. It's going to be great.
All right.
You should be able to
got it.
now.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. Okay. I trust you're seeing my rendering, right?
It looks great, George.
Good. Okay, good. Yeah. So I'm George Hauser. I'm the developer for actually two projects along in the vicinity of this proposed shelter. The first of which is 269 Brooklyn. It's actually directly opposite the street from the VOA detox facility. And then the second one is south of 269, separated by a public alley. It's 1050 South Washington. rendering is from the intersection of Brooklyn and 200 West, looking to the southeast. And on the right, you can see the existing UTA right-of-way, which we were advocating for the site for a linear park, along with a bike trail and pedestrian pathway and the future tracks lines. So it's depicted that way in our rendering. There's a 6-level building over a 2-story parking podium with a lobby entry clubhouse right on the intersection of 200 West in Brooklyn, opening out onto hopefully in the future a plaza that would be developed along that UTA right away. This is a locational map. It shows the 2 facilities here, 262 to the north and 1050 to the south, and then right across the street in this red dot is where the shelter is proposed. And our project is transit oriented. They're situated midway between 900 South and 1300 South Tracksway, and again along this green strip is the right of way. And one of the concerns about this site is this I-15 elevated ramp, which creates these overpasses, which are ideal places for sheltering homeless encampments. There's one, a fairly large one at 300 West. There's another one, a smaller one at 200 West. And then this portion here is actually raised, so there's areas under here as well. And then there's an overpass down here at 400 West. Here's a kind of a diagrammatic site plan, which shows 300 West on the side, the UTA right away. The 2 projects, one on the north and one on the south, separated by the public alley, South Washington Street on the right-hand side, and then the Brooklyn Avenue on the top of the drawing, and the proposed homeless shelter is located right here, kind of kitty corner opposite our entry. And this is a facade that presents itself to the homeless shelter. It actually has a mural on it. This is primarily a workforce oriented housing project. The mix is 169 studios, 36 1-bedrooms, and 32 2-bedrooms. They're organized around, they look obviously to the north, they look across Brooklyn, and then they look across to the west across the UTA right away, and there's their courtyards. The rest of the units focus on the courtyards. We've done, part of our, we had to go to a design review, so part of our approval process required providing additional landscaping and streetscaping amenities. So we're providing sidewalks along Brooklyn where there are none, adding street trees, street lighting. Our building is set back 10 feet, so there'll be a 10-foot landscape front yard, providing bike paths, bike parking, a small plaza area here in front of our courtyard. So here you can see a detailed plan of our lobby, clubhouse, backed by an office, and the access to the front yard along Brooklyn, and then we're developing a courtyard between the building and the right-of-way here that would be used for members of residents in the building. This is
George, you may be about to get to this, George, and I appreciate your diagram complete with the web bar. That's pretty great. But could you talk about how many units are going to be affordable and what affordability means?
Yeah, this is a 100% affordable project, and it's 60%, a little bit under 60% of AMI. So, the median rents in these places are, they range from at this date, they change as time goes by. They escalate every year a little bit with the cost of living, but they're roughly in the range of 850, 825, 850, 900, that sort of range for the studios. We developed a courtyard here, the landscape courtyards, and we have one of the prominent features of the building are these balconies that look out onto the street and provide an active edge, and likewise onto the UTA right away. We have a developed roof deck, with raised gardens and, you know, a recreation area. This is the facade that presents itself to the homeless facility, or potential homeless facility. This is 1050 South Washington, looking along the right-of-way again, UTA right-of-way, with a proposal to develop that, hopefully at some point in the future in association with UTA. And to create an active pedestrian edge along the west side of the building, which would, in combination with future developments along the right-of-way, would provide a pathway, diagonal pathway through the block down to the 1300 track station and give us a more immediate connection to that. This building has got an interior courtyard. Again, it's predominantly studios. It's a 2-level parking podium with 145 vehicle spaces and 166 bike storage spaces. Kind of a similar mix of units between studios, 1s and 2 bedrooms. A lot of, again, in this project, we had to develop landscaping. So if you're not familiar with South Washington, it's a dead-end street. It's undeveloped. There's no sidewalks, or there's no park strips, minimal lighting. So we're actually creating a sidewalk. We have a 10-foot setback, landscaped, a park strip between the sidewalk and the street. And we're creating the bulb out here so we can provide additional bike parking and a bench here, a concrete bench, and a kind of an area, a little bit of a plaza where the occupants of the building can, you know, have outdoor seating. And then additionally, we're providing a connection between this dead-end portion of South Washington back to the right-of-way and a pathway alongside the western side of our building. And hopefully, when the right-of-way is developed as a community resource, this will be open to the public, and it'll kind of take the stigma off of this dead-end street and allow some through traffic through here. This is kind of a profile through the street, showing the amenities that we're creating. In a detail, this is kind of the same detail of the lobby, but it shows the lobby, and there's some couple residential units along the edge here to activate it and provide some eyes on the street. And then we have a developed courtyard and again balconies, you know, activating the street edge and the UTA right away. Again, we have a roof deck, and we're proposing murals for these sides as well. This is the west elevation. Again, we'll have a mural along that side. These are some of the imagery that we use to kind of convey the sensibilities we have, the design sensibilities we have for our lobby spaces. And this is a slide dedicated to explaining why studios are important. You know, the highest poverty level for males and females are actually in the 18 to 34 range. And studios appeal to young adults. They can live alone instead of without roommates. They also appeal to couples and seniors. And providing these studio units actually frees up multi-bedroom units for families. And
Hey, George, I think we have we've got a question. Can you hear me, George?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Danny, are you unmuted? Can you say something? Chair, would you unmute Danny Hilbrand? Oh, you did.
Yeah. Oh, hey, George, looks like an absolutely terrific project. Love the fact that it has a 100% affordability component. Killer. We support it 1000%. For the sake of time, I think we do need to ask you to kind of skip over some of these details. We have 90 people on the call. Okay, so now what we would like to hear from you, though, because this is incredible. We love this investment in our community. We love the affordability component. Amazing. Great work. Keep it up. We support you 1000%. Can you speak specifically to the impact this homeless shelter, this outflow center will have on your project? So does this affect your ability to get tax exempt bonds? Does this affect your ability to get the LIHTC equity? Speak to that directly.
The challenge in LIHTC is making the project pencil. Okay, they're very tight in terms of the financing, and they're totally dependent on rents. Just like a market rate project is. They're subsidized through tax credits. That reduces your capital overlay, but you're still constrained. If you don't have enough rental income, you can't service your bonds, and you can't satisfy your tax credit investor. And the fear is that because of the proximity to the homeless shelter, that we'll have trouble attracting tenants, and we'll have to depreciate our rents, and that'll push us into the area where we just can't feasibly make the project successful. And the other problem is that we don't know, because of the lack of community outreach, and we're ignorant of the project. We don't know what the improvement plans are. We don't know their operational strategy. We don't know how they're going to manage inflows and outflows and parking, and all those issues. We're kind of in a situation where we can't really evaluate the impacts it's going to have on our rents. And so,
well said. So let me just to ask specific questions. So real quick, total proposed units. How many affordable units? Several hundred, correct?
There's
across both phases.
Yeah.
230.
Well,
so
the other one, the 1050 project is market rate. So there's 238 affordable and 287 market rate units.
Okay, so between the two, 500-ish units,
520.
half of which with the initial phase being affordability. So just to anyone on the call who's a decision maker, I don't know if anyone at the Appropriations Committee is hearing this, but this idea jeopardizes bringing desperately needed affordable housing units, several hundred, in addition to the market rate units, which are very welcome and invest in the community. Those are gone. So we are outraged that our community that is desperately in need is going to lose that investment into our community and those affordable units because of this flippant decision to throw a homeless outreach center in the, I would argue, the community that is already bearing the greatest burden of the homeless crisis in our community. So we're not against helping the homeless. We're not against allocating tax dollars to support homeless outreach centers. No. But what we do want is that this burden is shared within our community. Currently, this burden is isolated specifically to our community in the Ballpark area. We don't want to lose the affordable housing units, and it is absurd to saddle our neighborhood with yet another homeless obligation. It's ridiculous. We already do not have enough resources. If you've attended these meetings over the years, this will be, I will be beating a dead horse. But so this is absurd. We love your project. Thank you for highlighting that. Absolutely ridiculous that this is going to jeopardize that. I will attempt to be at this next meeting, but if I cannot be there, I hope everyone echoes those sentiments to whoever is on the board to make that $3 million appropriation. This is not the place. On a side note, I cannot fathom that price for 0.3 acres for a deal that has no parking. Just speaking in terms of effectively outlaying taxpayer dollars, that's absurd. I'd even turn my question back to George, who's a real estate developer, and say, hey, George, I got 0.3 acres. It's already a built out office building that's relatively dilapidated. How are we justifying a $3 million valuation for that? Can we grammar request the appraisal? Like, is this an arm's length transaction? I don't get how they're justifying it. There must be an operating subsidy.
Actually, I can. I'd love to direct this question to Dave Kelly from the Pioneer Park Coalition. Thanks for being on our call, Dave. And to answer your question, male person who's on with Danny, who I think is probably not Danny. You can, if you look at the publicly available documents that go with this meeting, you can see how that price tag of $3 million was arrived at, but Dave
Oh,
could give us
perfect.
some insight. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't gone through and done a complete broker opinion of value on the property, right? But looking at the opinion of value, it's using product that isn't comparable, right? Setting land values with 4.5 acres that's available for sales as opposed to 0.33638. And without having gone through the building, I can't speak to what it looks like on the inside, but construction costs, trying to use replacement costs to justify the value. There's just a couple, it doesn't work at 3 million. It's somewhere between that 2 to 2.5 without me saying, okay, I've gone through it and I've dug into it. But it's the initial pass, that's what it's worth.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
the thing that is
it's
most
high.
concerning, can I say something? I think one of the things that's most concerning to me is that, first of all, the person who did the opinion of value has a conflict, okay? She's the seller's agent, okay? And it was essentially, it's essentially set up to justify a value that VOA needed in order to make a down payment on another facility in Redwood, on Redwood Highway. Okay, so it basically just pulled numbers out of the air. She created a range, but the range isn't supported, and then she took the middle of the range. So it was just there to pad their need, essentially, and it's really problematic because if first of all, this project, the project will require a conditional use permit. All right, it has one now, but it's not for the use in question. So the use permit, I've been told, can't be denied, but the use permit comes with conditions. That's why it's in the word conditional use, and the conditions could be so strident that it would actually make it infeasible to operate. So they're investing in a piece of land that they don't actually know that they're ever going to be able to use. And if they have to turn it back to the market and resell it, they could take a loss on it. All right, if they paid $3 million for it. And
yeah, George, as a real estate developer with private capital, would you ever close on a piece of ground under those conditions?
No.
Interesting.
There has to be an analysis of the merits of the property to determine that your use is actually going to be feasible. Just like I am here, I have to evaluate how my project is going to get financed and whether it's going to be financially successful. And then when something comes up at the last minute and you realize, well, wow, this is going to turn it on its ear, then you have to rethink the whole thing. And so it's imprudent to just throw your money at something without knowing, what are you going to do with the building? What are the costs? Do you have any drawings? Do you have any plans to renovate it? What are those costs going to be? How are you going to deal with the issue of, your use permit? You have a hearing before the Planning Commission. These are all things that a prudent developer would do. And the other important thing is they would engage in extensive neighborhood outreach. I've been to the Ballpark Community Council multiple times to present my project. I took in, comment from the neighborhood, and those are the kinds of things that you have to do in order to be a responsible developer and a successful one.
Yeah, seems completely reasonable. Seems like an absolute attempted fraudulent theft of taxpayer dollars, in addition to all the spiraling negative consequences to the neighborhood. But yeah, no, thanks for illustrating that. I absolutely will be reviewing that and sending in comments. I totally agree. So George, thank you so much. Keep up the great projects. Amy, thank you so much for organizing on the fly. You guys are awesome. So thank you.
Hey, George, are you, I'm just questioning, I'm putting out there if, I don't know about the ownership of the VOA, but I'm wondering if this project was ever offered to the public for purchase and if you might be interested in purchasing that. And second, I want to say that conditional use, when I listened to the meeting about the purchase, they talked about, they are going after this conditional use to use it, but also the numbers, hey, in the future, if we wanted to have 200 beds, 500 beds, 1,000 beds, could we go back and get another conditional use to allow that? And the answer was yes. They didn't say, when we talked with them and asked, is that in the future plans, they wouldn't say no. So those are my two things I was wondering about.
Shelley, I just want to say something, and I think your comments are great. I'm Paul Johnson. I'm the chair of the Central Ninth Community Council, and happy to co-host this with very short notice with our lovely Ballpark neighbors. The whole lack of community engagement is what has shocked, I think, most of us, what's forced us to put this together at the last minute. But the questions of what Shelley has just mentioned, of the different permits that were mentioned either in jest or seriously at this meeting about future potential uses. And, I think one of the great concerns for Central Ninth and for Ballpark is a lot of us attended a lot of public meetings hosted by Volunteers of America when they were proposing the homeless youth shelter in our neighborhood. And we were promised that the goal was always to keep homeless adults away from homeless youth. They're very, very different affected communities. And that by voluntarily hosting this youth shelter, we would be helping to protect our neighborhood from something like this coming in. And so, I don't use the word lightly, but there's a great sense of betrayal from some of these service organizations that said what they needed to at the time to get our approval and support. And all of a sudden now we hear in the few comments, because they all refuse to participate tonight. So whether it be short notice or not, this is such an important issue that you make it work. You show up when your community counts on you. And that's what we've done tonight. And yet none of these organizations that support the homeless have official representatives this evening. And to me, that's very, very disturbing. But the fact that no one will make us a guarantee or a promise, and I get that things change, but nobody can allay our concerns about the future potential of what could happen there. I mean, right now, the heart of Central Ninth, where I live, is in the smack center of 2 adult homeless shelters. I'm 1 block away from the youth shelter. We have Spy Hop, which is a youth program a block away. We have developers who have really taken great advantage of, and I know some people will cringe, but not so great zoning in my neighborhood that has allowed very poorly built micro unit walk-ups to be built that are not going to age very well. And our fear is, are we going to become a slum part of Salt Lake City at some point? Is this where we're headed? Are we the neighborhood that just is going to get dumped on because we're not rich? We don't have attorneys to fight. We're working class. We're working full-time jobs. We're doing our best for the community, but we've never been as loud as Sugar House or the Avenues. And we really wish that they were all on our team, because we're on their side. We want our city to succeed, but we deserve our chance too. So we have invested. I've lived in this neighborhood for 16 years. I am committed to Central Ninth, Ballpark, and Granary, and I don't want to have to leave. And we're already dealing with levels of homelessness that we've never seen before. And it's so disturbing to me to have to send a message on the Salt Lake City mobile app, which is great, by the way, but it's so disturbing to me that I have to request the city come and clean up human feces that's in my driveway on a weekly basis. So there's a lot of problems going on here. I think that the city has not shown the ability to mitigate the situations outside of the existing shelters the way that we were all promised in the prior administration. And so I think that we come into this with a lot of skepticism, for one, that this can actually be mitigated and done. And this is not even a resource center that's being proposed. This is something what I would consider a lot more dangerous for the neighborhood. But and then the fact that we've just been cut out of the communications, and heard that, people at the state thought this was communicated to the neighborhood, and clearly it was not. None of us who are here tonight heard about this before the Tribune's article 2 weeks ago. So that to me is the most shocking thing. I really, my most frustrating thing has been the lack of community engagement. I cannot believe that nobody who was a part of this concept or idea would have reached out to Granary, Central Ninth, or Ballpark. I'm flabbergasted. So I'll let somebody else speak for a minute, but it's just shocking to me. It's shocking to me, and I think I will say I'm very happy to hear the mayor withdraw her support today. I was very disheartened that she had supported it at all. And I think it shows that we still need to work on how we address homelessness issues in our community in the whole process, because dropping a bomb on us like this and then telling us you have 2 weeks before the state finalizes the purchase of this, I think my head almost exploded that night. So yeah, that's all I can say. So thank you for being here and for everyone participating.
Cameron, you sent me a really good question that
Right.
you wanted to pose to some of the elected officials who are on this call.
Right. I mean,
And as right after you sent it to me, I also noticed that Representative Romero just signed on as well.
I just saw that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. It's a very emotional discussion, and I understand everybody's point. Just background, Infinite Scale. I'm one of the partners. We moved to Central Ninth and built our own building for our company a couple of years ago. And one of the points that I would make is that, we took a long time in looking around the city to identify an area in which we felt like was both a neighborhood, it was urban, it had business and residences, which Paul lives on Washington. Sorry, Paul. And we're right on 900 in Jefferson. And the point that I would make, and then I will ask the question of our elected officials, is that we spent a lot of time, money, effort, and energy in deciding that Central Ninth would be our new home for our business. And to move there, and then to have the issues that have been occurring, which for the homeless and the folks that are, don't want to be housed. We had a fleet block issue for months, created a lot of issues. And to have this thing, be dropped on us and come into our neighborhood is very disconcerting. Not only for me personally, but then for, half of my staff are females. I found two needles at my gate on Monday. And the whole flea block's been cleaned out, so it's all around us and we don't see it. We spent $2,000 closing in a transformer that we don't even own anymore, the land, because people were living, sleeping, doing drugs behind it. So it feels like for an area in which Salt Lake wanted to develop, and we were part of that solution of coming in and building in, infilling that area, to drop another homeless shelter, an overflow center, along the railroad corridor, which is also kind of a bunch of hidey holes, these underpasses as well, which George just spoke about. It just doesn't make sense to me. You're trying to develop this area, and yet you're trying to tear it down at the same time. So I would ask our officials, Representative Briscoe and Representative Romero, your thoughts on this project and the rationale behind putting another homeless shelter, which Danielle and her husband also talked about, in an area that's already maxed out. So I'll stop speaking in that.
Amy, can I go first? I want to apologize to everyone. I'm at my aunt's house, so I had to get internet access and everything. I just had my floors redone, so, and I'm sunburned because I've been outside all day. So I just want to apologize to everyone ahead of time. And that's why I was late, because I had to meet with the contractor and go over that to make sure everything was okay. In regards to this overflow shelter, I learned about it through Amy and Paul, and by them sending me the article in the newspaper. So I felt, as a person who represents you all in the House of Representatives, disrespected by them not even contacting me, or I don't know if they contacted Representative Briscoe, but again, this was a surprise to us. And as many of you know, if any of you have known me, I was one of the only representatives that was against Operation Rio Grande, because I knew what was going to happen, and everything that me and Representative Hollins and Senator Escamilla predicted is happening right now. So the things that you're all experiencing in Ballpark, we're also experiencing in my own neighborhood of Glendale. And it just seems like we get all these broken promises by others who may have more power than I do. And it feels like they want us as a district and as neighborhoods to carry the state on our backs. And we're not people who want to discriminate against everyone. We want to make sure that everyone feels safe and has a place to live. At the same time, I, as an elected official, I get frustrated when they think that my district in particular, I have Fortitude, which houses people coming out of prison and people who violate parole in my district. They're looking at the other side village being put in my district. I also have 2 of the homeless shelters in my district. So I feel like all of us have stepped up. And so now it's time for other neighborhoods in Salt Lake City and across Salt Lake County and the state of Utah. They need to step up as well. So that's kind of where I'm at on this issue. I've been talking to both my Republican and my Democrat colleagues about why I don't support the overflow shelter, but I don't want people to think it's because I don't want to address people who are experiencing homelessness. I'm just saying, when's enough for one particular neighborhood and 2 particular communities when we're talking about the Ballpark community and as well as the Glendale and Poplar Grove communities and anything west of 3rd West in Salt Lake City. So that's all I have to say.
Joel, I keep asking to unmute you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, if there's anyone online right now who works for the Salt Lake Tribune, God bless you. Because if it weren't for us reading the newspaper, where would we be right now? If the Tribune wasn't doing its job of informing the public about what's going on. There's so many reasons to be concerned, and you've outlined many of them. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I've been to lots of meetings over the years. And one of the first locations proposed for one of these shelters was in Sugar House. I spent a good 2 or 3 hours walking that neighborhood with the residents. I agreed with them. It's not a good place for a shelter. They asked me to sponsor legislation saying no one could ever put a shelter in that location, and I refused. One of the reasons I refused was someone said, "We'll put it on the west side." And I said, 30-second time out here. I have friends who represent the west side of Salt Lake City, and they will list for you the prison, all the halfway houses, all the various amenities that we say, well, you know what? The west side can take it. We can put it all over there. So this issue disturbs me because it's a microcosm of the very thing that Mayor Mendenhall, I think, has been fighting for, and I think she should fight more aggressively. I want to see her get angry. She's always so in control of herself. I love Mayor Mendenhall. I'm a great supporter, but I want to really see her take some people on. And I love the fact that I live in a city that cares about taking care of our unsheltered friends. I love it. What I don't love is letting every other city pass anti-camping ordinances, hassle the people out of their city, fine them and go, well, we won't make you pay the ticket, or cite you if you'll get out of here, and they come here. And then we get to deal with it. I think that the EAC, the Executive Appropriation, should pull back from approving this funding. They should pause. We need to take a good, long, hard look about whether or not we're overpaying. That's one issue. We need to look at how the decision was made. But I think the most important fundamental issue here is this is just as the mayor wants the rest of Utah to pick up the slack on helping our unsheltered men and women and families, no one area of any city should have two of these. One is plenty. And to put two here doesn't pass a fairness test. There's ethical issues here, but assuming they'd had public meetings, assuming they were paying what everyone agreed was a fair price, assuming it didn't impact a really gorgeous proposed development immediately across the street, if they had dotted every I and crossed every T, it would still not be a good idea because it overburdens one area, and everyone should share. Everyone should have a piece of this. Not one area of the city having too much. So I'm going to be doing some reach out to my friends on EAC. I appreciate the work that Representative Romero has done, but I think we need to work with the state homeless people to come up with some operating guidelines which say, just because it's easy to get them into Salt Lake City, we're not going to continue to put them all there. Other people need to share. So that's my 2 bits. I'm happy to put my contact information. I'll put my contact information in the chat, and you can reach out to me if you'd like. Thanks.
Thank you, Representatives Briscoe and Romero. I really appreciate folks not pretending that there aren't negative impacts associated with homeless shelters. I think that was an attitude that's been represented to our community before, and it's patronizing and it's wrong. Danny Hillebrand has a question for Detective Meinzer.
You want me to talk, or did we want to get the other questions first?
Oh yeah, I don't really have any specific questions. I was just curious, you know, we live in the neighborhood, we live off 200 West, right on the train line. And, you know, we've called the cops 5,000 times while living in our home. So I'm just curious from your perspective, how you think this will impact our community, if you think there's any positive things that this will bring to our community, or your thoughts on the issue. Thank you. And thanks for coming into our community and helping.
Yeah, thanks for calling on me. So I like stats to talk for me. It's kind of hard for my position to have a personal opinion about the matter because I have to represent the police department as well as kind of keep everybody in mind, you know, and my perspective is I've been working with homelessness for my whole career. And so I can see a lot of the different aspects to it. But what I did do when I first heard about the location, I wanted to kind of pull the stats to just kind of see what we're dealing with in that specific area. If I can share my screen, I'll share the stat sheet that we got back.
Terrell, would you give Detective Meinzer special powers?
I think I have special powers.
Oh, well, maybe you do.
He's already got them.
I'm like a wizard. Okay, so the document that I pulled was specifically the 252 Brooklyn Avenue and the 1,500 feet surrounding it. So everyone can see this, correct? Cool. So I had our people pull, and I kind of look at everything like a math problem. I want to know, you know, what are the demographics of all the issues we're dealing with to kind of know where we're at. And something that was, I guess, not surprising to me was seeing there's a lot of increases here. And it kind of mirrors when we look at the rest of District 5, is you kind of see some upward trends when we look at the January to August for each year and we compare it to the 5-year average. So specifically the Brooklyn Avenue and the surrounding area right now, there's a lot of concern for violent crime. So if you look at the assaults, it's up quite a bit. And then there's some other categories that are property crimes. So in terms of crime in the area, it is right now, it's hotspot area right now where we're having to work extra in the area to try and deter some of these issues. So in terms of crime, there is quite a bit around that area that we are dealing with. So specifically, there's a lot popping up near Jefferson Park, which is pretty close to the VOA right now. And so that's something that there's been an increase in fights, drug use, camping, and things like that. So that's something that we try to work on to try and reduce. We've had multiple drug arrests out of there to try and deal with it. I guess from a perspective of my thoughts is the location. I'm just worried with the youth VOA being a little close. I don't want to see more people get victimized. If it were to grow into a large shelter, someone had mentioned potentially hundreds of beds. I just don't know. I mean, that's something that I don't really have answers to on how it could affect them or not, but that's just like a personal thing. I just want to make sure that we take care of people. So if we have people staying there, like, are they going to be safe in the neighborhood? Are they going to have fair opportunities? So it's kind of hard to put my opinions out there and still be in line with what I'm permitted to say, if that makes sense. Yeah, go ahead, Dania.
Oh, thank you. I know, Amy, maybe you have the stats for this. Can you speak about Ballpark being one of having the highest? I know you did a meeting, our neighborhood needed a fight against crime, which is hilarious. Like, we had to do this meeting to fight against crime. Anyways, I sadly couldn't go, but I know the stats on, we have one of the highest homicide rates in the city, or crime. Like, can you speak more generally, not just specific to Brooklyn Ave? Because I think, 13th, obviously like 1700 South down to 900 South and beyond obviously is impacted, but 13th to 9th is insane. Amy or officer, sorry, I can't find you on the screen. Can you share more of your thoughts on that?
I know Detective Miser can answer questions about crime far better than I can, although it's something we talk about together a lot with strange enthusiasm for charts and data. But Danny, one of the ways that I do want to answer your question is to point out one of the other reasons that we're really concerned about the idea of citing more homeless resources in this neighborhood is the fact that people experiencing homelessness have experienced violent crime in our neighborhood, really violent crime, right? Jesse Hulse has reminded us that a woman at the 9th South track station last November was stabbed 16 times. 2 people experiencing homelessness have been killed in Ballpark so far this year. 2 people were killed last year. I don't know if any of those numbers have crossed anybody's frame of reference when they're thinking about putting additional homeless resources in this neighborhood. We're not coping very well with what we have.
And I don't have the data in front of me. All I know is my brother has some property in the area. He went to list his duplex, and Facebook had an algorithm where it quantified the crime, the violent crime and property crime in your local geographic area and compared it against the nation. We were in the top percentile in the entire nation for violent crime and property crime. It literally was flashing in red. This was actual data from Facebook using their listing service. So yeah, just another reason to say we can't bear more of the burden.
Can you see my screen again?
Yes, thank you, Detective Miser.
So this is the most recent week for CompStat. So this is District 5 altogether. This isn't just Ballpark. So this is a bit more broad than just specifically Ballpark.
Detective Miser, does anybody have access to this data?
Yes, it's all available online on our website at slcpd.com. It all comes out every single month. And I can get you a link if anyone is interested to be able to download it on your own. And it also goes through every single different district throughout the whole entire city. So if we refer back to our stats here, this kind of paints that picture that you're looking for to look at crimes in District 5 and how we're faring when we compare it to our year-to-date average from last year, then also for our 5-year average, as well as our previous 28 days. So as you can kind of see, if you look, it's got a lot of red and there's also some green. It kind of really depends on the different categories. So if we're wanting to talk about like violent crimes, they do break that down into a category. So in the last 28 days, we're currently 19.4% up. If you compare it to our last year average, we're 5.7% down. And then if you compare it to our 5-year average, we're 24% up. And that's all together categorized for all the violent crimes: aggravated assault, robberies, rapes, homicides, things like that. So when you mention the homicides specifically, if you look at the very top row, that goes over the homicides. Compared to our 5-year to date average, we're up 150%. And then in the last 20 days, that 5-year average is 0.4. And so having one obviously makes it look like a huge jump. But there was one in the last 28 days. So obviously 150% up. So if we want to talk about specifically property crimes, that's where we go down to the next section below. And you can go through individually. And that's kind of how I like to look at them, is individually instead of grouping them all together. So like the burglaries for residentials over the last 28 days has been fantastic, a great decrease. But then you go to all other burglaries like sheds, things like that, big increase. And so you'll kind of notice trends like that where they'll switch what they're doing. But there are some areas where crime is higher than others. And it kind of really depends when you look back on previous years. So when you look at the 5-year to date average category, there are quite a few reds in there. Does that kind of answer your questions, Danny?
Yes, it does. Yeah, paints the picture well. And I see some other people have their hands up, so we'll mute ourselves. But no, well, very well presented. I think the data presents a compelling and very clear picture.
John Allison, your arm must be getting tired. You laughed
Yes,
at my
my arm
stupid joke.
My arm is very, very tired. My digital arm is very tired. I'd just like to add a couple comments. One is I support everyone's comments and concerns. They bring up some really, really valid points, ones that I've had myself. Just my first general comment is like, I moved here because I wanted to live in a walkable neighborhood, whether it's here or not, or their Central 9th. And I'd like to keep it that way. And there's no ability to do so when there's so many issues here by concentrating all the resources. You know, I can't walk my dog without being concerned about heroin needles. You know, my wife can't go out and walk at night or early in the morning without feeling unsafe. I have friends and families who come and visit who won't leave the house, literally will not leave the house because they're too scared to. And I'm tired of it. It's really, really tiresome. And then, you know, the second comment is, you know, for all the contact people and everything else, if someone could just post all that on the Facebook page or in the newsletter, I'm happy to share that to other people who aren't on the call tonight, just to get them out there and rattle some cages. Because I really, really think that the way that the city or the state has done this and just pop this on us is like totally wrong. So that's all I like to say. Thanks for letting me take a moment to speak.
Thank you, John. Thank you for getting your dog on television. It's very fun.
Yes, of course.
Jesse, I know not Jesse Walker, but Jesse Holst, who hasn't had a hand icon for some reason. He's been pestering me to ask a question for a while. And by pester, I mean ask in a very friendly, professional manner.
Thank you. I want to make a statement and then a quick question. You know, a lot has already been said, a lot of good things, and a lot of this is a recap, but I think this meeting is kind of a microcosm of what's been going on. You know, there was no community engagement, no public process. And not only are they foisting a shelter upon us, but they're also leaving it us to do the engagement, leaving it to us to do the work and hold this meeting. I think it's shameful. I think it's incredibly disappointing. And I think we've really been let down by our leadership here. It's just so interesting to me that they closed the road home. $3 million of that sale is set aside for an overflow shelter. Conveniently, $3 million is the price being paid for this property to move essentially the road home south into our neighborhood, which already has a preponderance of other services and shelters. It's just incredibly frustrating, you know, when you look at this is all done behind closed doors. Why haven't we heard from our city on this? Where, Weston, I know you're on here. Andrew Johnston, you know, we know that the administration was involved in this vote. Why did we have to hear about this in the Tribune? Why are you not coming before us and engaging with us ahead of time, ahead of this meeting? We've been trying to get in contact with people in the city and hearing no response. The stabbing that occurred in front of Spy Hop is horrifying. You know, we all worked really hard to bring Spy Hop to this neighborhood. They have kids as young as 9 years old coming to that facility, and they thought this was a safe neighborhood. They were chased out of the Rio Grande neighborhood by the road home because of violent incidents against their students, and they were forced to leave. They come here thinking they're safe and that the track stop is an amenity. And it's like nobody even thought about this. And it's because you guys didn't do the engagement at the state level, at the local level, to understand what this neighborhood is. And now we're all here at the last minute trying to fix this. It's just unbelievably frustrating. I think it just strikes to the heart of what this is supposed to be. This is supposed to be community-driven engagement and community democracy. And that's completely been short-circuited by what really looks like a pretty dirty deal. I'm just so disgusted, honestly. And I'd like for people that knew about this, I'd like to give them a chance to tell us what happened and where this went off the rails and how we're going to trust you again. Because given the broken promises from the VOA that said they would never allow an adult shelter in our neighborhood, and now this, this is the exact wrong way to go about trying to get the neighborhood to be on board with hosting another facility. I can't think of a worse way to go about this. That's my
Thank
2
you,
cents.
Jesse. Might even be 3 cents. Thank you, Jesse. That was very good. Would anybody from the mayor's office care to respond to Jesse's questions?
Sure. It's Andrew Johnston. I think a couple of things I've heard tonight. There's a comment made earlier that the state is placing it here. I think that's not accurate. It's a private land development sort of deal. So the state has the ability to allocate funds through the AC next week, I believe. That's the state's role in this. So I don't know where that was earlier on, but just to clarify, the state's not running this, and neither is the city, to be honest with you. Now, as far as acknowledgement of it, there has been some talks about it within homeless community work and figuring out the overflow needs for this year. And this wouldn't happen this year. This is planned for next year, winter of 2022. So look, I agree about outreach. I don't think we can ever do enough outreach on these things. And clearly here, it didn't happen that way. So that's a valid point. There's no way around that piece. I think the other piece I'm intrigued by right now, not to change it, but is there opposition to the detox center remaining there or the overflow going in there?
I can address that.
Okay.
The detox center is a low impact facility. It's for people who've committed to change. They're trying to better themselves. An overflow shelter is a high impact facility. There's no barrier to entry. It's basically an amenity for people who want to camp, but it's there for them on the coldest nights. It only encourages camping around it. I think to compare the two is really dangerous in this discussion. It's kind of a red herring.
I wasn't comparing the two. I was just asking the question.
Well, I'm just heading off I want to head that off now because I think it's important. And this is the kind of obfuscation that has been coming up in this discussion. And I'm frustrated because you're saying it's not the state, but the state's purchasing the building. So obviously they have a big part in this. So that seems like a distinction without a difference to me.
Well, the state's not purchasing. Shelter the Homeless is proposed to purchase as a nonprofit. So they're applying to the state for the funds to do it.
Well, it's state, the person with the money is doing the buying, right? I mean, in the end, if it's public, if it's state money, then the state's buying it.
I understand, Jesse. I'm just clarifying because from a state perspective, there are state folks on the call right now, and they're going to say, well, wait, we're not doing this. There's a state commission that can allocate that funding. So I get your point. It is state money that's going towards the allocation, but they're not doing it themselves, just to clarify for folks. So
Okay.
that's all.
But let's not get lost in semantics.
Okay.
Distinction without a difference.
Not arguing that piece, but I'm just saying from a state perspective, they would say they're not buying it. So put it out there and clarify it. Okay. Now Shelter the Homeless is proposing to buy it. Okay. That's clear. They're asking money for it to do it. If the state EAC says they're going to give the money, then they're approving it. Yeah.
Andrew, would you want this to go into your community?
Would I want an overflow to go in my community?
Yes. Would you want this to go into your community with the way that the property is zoned, so that if they applied for conditional use and they could, after the fact, after they purchased it, really kind of up the ante with the beds, right? Say they could bring in 250, 300, 400, 500 beds. Would you want to bring that into your community as is right now?
Well, I think the first thing is that's a conditional use process, and that's up to the city council to set that, or the current one that's in place, which limits, it was set for those two facilities themselves. So a new conditional use could be written for this one differently. And I would say it probably have to be, in my perspective, because the floor, it's about square footage per floor. So you couldn't do a certain number in there. So the hard cap could go in here as well, whatever limit, say the city council or whatever's written on the books could do that. I don't agree with the escalating it like you're talking about. I think that was the problem in the original road home. And that's why the new ones put in there pretty hard caps, which has its own downfall from a system perspective, but it works for keeping that expectation in the community. From a personal perspective, like I work in the homeless system for 20 years now. I've lived around these. I understand the concerns, guys. I'm not going to minimize that. I get it. I see what's happened around the resource centers. I've been knee deep in it. Well, been waist deep in it now for 3 months. So I'm not going to minimize that. I'm also coming from the perspective of trying to figure out how to solve stuff. And from the mayor's perspective, she's been pretty clear since that vote that she doesn't want it here. I think she's saying that publicly now. She's saying that to the providers themselves. I agree with the folks who are talking about how frustrating it is. I've been trying to work with cities for, well, I'm going on 6 years now, to find other locations in the county, and it's incredibly challenging. I've been trying to find places in the city, and it's incredibly challenging. So I get the concerns. I'm not oblivious to those. I'm hearing what you're saying. The mayor hears what you're saying. So I'm going to keep working on trying to figure out where to put stuff as much as possible in cities.
I ask that because I know that your community struggles the same way that we do. And, honestly, like the violence is just out of control. In the past 3 weeks, I live over right by the ballpark, and we had shots fired. 5 shots went off in the middle of the night, right by my house in the alley behind my house. And then another week goes by and Liberty Park had a shooting. Another week goes by, we had 5 more shots. People were shooting at each other. And I mean, it's just escalating out of control. And if something else like this comes into our neighborhood, I can't even fathom what's going to happen. And we've got 3 little girls living here, and there are children in this neighborhood that walk to the elementary school, and I mean, people talk about like all the housing developments and whatnot, but I mean, we have a vibrant neighborhood with tons of children running around here, and it's just a matter of time until one of those kids gets in the crossfire, or another one of those violent acts that is happening because the violence has followed the homeless here. And we've lived here, we've owned our house for 14 years. We lived up right near there on Meade Avenue for 4 more years. We lived in Jefferson School Apartments. It's never been this bad. I have never, ever in my life thought I can't do this anymore. I love this neighborhood. I love living in the ballpark. We chose this area for a reason. And I just think, how much more can we take? We just can't. We can't take anymore.
Andrew, I also want to state, we have 100 people here tonight. We are willing participants. We care. We want things to go well. Why would you do this to us? Not even tell us that this is happening.
We volunteer our time in the community, right? We go to the Gail Miller Resource Center meetings. I'm on the Federal Housing Trust Fund. We are involved in the master planning of this area. We are active community members, and I don't know what more I can do to be more active to help the situation. It's just so frustrating. And maybe I just wanted to say that out loud, because I love this neighborhood and I want to stay here, but it's being ruined. It's being ruined. There are people laying all over the streets. The homeless aren't even being helped by these shelters. There's nothing here for them. There's no libraries. There's no community centers. There is nothing. There's not an amenity here for them. We don't have a medical facility to help them when they get hurt. There is nothing for here, so they just sit around and they lay on the street and they do drugs. And that is no way to live either. We have to support more affordable housing and get them off the street, not create more shelters.
I agree on that. I do.
I'm just wondering if there's somebody in attendance who knows when this plan was developed or came about, because for most of us here, it's 2 weeks is all we've heard about. Clearly, it's been more than 2 weeks. And so I think that one of the great frustrations this evening is these organizations that are here to support the most vulnerable in our community cut out the community. And so I'm trying to understand what happened here so this does not ever happen again.
Hey, Paul, can I remind you of something? Do you remember when George presented the Bumper Works project maybe 6-8 months ago?
I do.
And was very much attacked by the employees of the VOA? I sort of wonder if there was something in the strategic plan at that point that the VOA was thinking about when George was really gone after over his project going in there.
I will admit that I
not
thought
valid?
the same thing, but
Suspect, but
it does raise concerns. So I just would love to understand how community engagement on such a sensitive charged topic could have been so overlooked. And it feels like such a personal attack on Central 9th and Ballpark. And I won't even say West Side neighborhoods anymore. There's a center part of Salt Lake City. You look at a satellite image and we're just barren. We don't have green space. West Side is getting more trees and I'm so happy for them. East Side gets new parks and I'm happy for them. We're begging for scraps in the center part of Salt Lake City between the freeway and State Street, all the way from downtown to 21st South. And I think maybe I probably speak for a lot of people. I've never felt more frustrated than hearing about this 2 weeks ago. I feel like years of working hard and volunteering and spending way too many hours for my community were all for naught. And that's frustrating. And I don't want anybody here to give up. We're fighting for our neighborhood, and this is why it's just so frustrating. So I'm trying to understand if somebody can tell me when this plan was developed and how we were cut out. That's what I would really love to know.
The real question is, when did the mayor know, and when did all of these other people know that this was going on and not bring it to our attention? That's the question.
That's the question.
I think we have people here that can answer that.
So I'd like an answer.
So I think that's a question. That's a question for Shelter the Homeless and VOA fundamentally. I think the discussion about the overflows, the need for that's been in the Salt Lake Valley Coalition for a while now. I do know that from working with the private providers who are looking for locations, and they're still looking for locations throughout the valley, those are hard discussions to have publicly. So a lot of times they haven't gone public very often with them. But I can't really speak to Shelter the Homeless and VOA though at this point. I apologize for that. Yeah, that's probably as far as I can go with that.
I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be really blunt. The mayor was in the committee that made this recommendation.
Right.
She voted yes for it. So to say the administration can't speak to this is untrue. It's garbage. It's unacceptable for you to say that.
I'm going to be even more blunt because I can't take this anymore. I'm going to be even more blunt, and I'm sorry. This is all of our own fault. I want us all to accept this. Number one, we're accepting the Gail Miller Center. There are good things that come of it. Last night, there were 14 registered sex offenders in the Gail Miller Center. Next door to me, Who wants those guys in our neighborhood and who wants to pay for that? Right? These are not people that are going to be rehabilitated. All right. Now you're going to put some lawlessness type nonsense down the street. And let me tell you what, this is our own fault. And this is our own fault because of who we elected into office. So I'm going to keep this real short and real sweet. What we all need to remember come election time, and I'm going to be blunt, and I'm sorry, I know he's on the phone, starting with Darren Mano, is vote him out of office. Vote Mayor Mendenhall out of office. Vote all these politicians that did this to us and continue to do this out of office. We're in control. This is our city. They are representatives. They are not leaders, and they need to communicate with us, and they can't be allowed to do this anymore.
Bob, just because you called me out directly, I do want to respond to that. I found out about this 24 hours before everybody else did. And
I'm not talking.
Council has absolutely no role in this, other than, as Andrew Johnson said, we could rewrite the conditional use permit, and there's a lot of question as to whether there would even be time for that. But there is a conditional use application on the books that has been on the books since before the previous resource centers were into place, and that can all go without city council approval. So I just want you to know that I didn't know this any more than 24 hours before you did.
Yeah, but you're not pissed and you're not fighting.
The Paul from the, sorry, go ahead.
This is James Alfondre. I'd like to step in and say just a short little statement, if I can. I have to go here, unfortunately. Just quickly, I've been involved in the neighborhood for over 12 years through my nonprofit Kentlands Initiative in the Granary District specifically, and now more recently as a role as a developer. So I want to come to it from an angle of economic development. I think that could get the state's attention because about our company, we have over 1,100 units in the Ballpark and Central 9th neighborhood, either completed, under construction, or in pre-development. It's over $250 million worth of investment. And we're small potatoes compared to what's happening in the Granary District right now. Between the Granary District, the Central 9th, and the Ballpark, they're all one and the same. This is one of the best economic opportunities in the state. The state moved the prison from Draper because that became a great option for economic development. There's over $1 billion in the pipeline of investment coming to the Granary District. It's an opportunity zone. It's full of warehouses. It's ripe for this incredible opportunity. And we're at this tipping point. One of our buildings was lit on fire by an arson. That's hard to explain to an investor. Are we really investing in the right place if buildings are being lit on fire? It's hard to bring investors down to a neighborhood where there are needles on the ground, where there are encampments happening. We're able to talk through it, but we're at a tipping point. And this investment that is planned for this neighborhood that we are actively doing, and there are other groups actively doing as well, is going to come in severe jeopardy. And that is something that is real. I feel for all the residents. I feel for all the business owners. We're property owners down there. We're down there every day. So I don't want to minimize that, but there are billion with a B dollars of investment planned for this opportunity zone that's in the Granary District. And if this continues to be a place that is becomes the new Rio Grande and is the place to shoulder the load of all of this, all of these services, that economic development opportunity is going to become in jeopardy. And that's just a fact. The mayor was down here a couple of weeks ago touring the Granary District, learning about all the plans and all that's happening. And it's again, as I said before, one of the best economic opportunities in the whole state right now. So I just want to leave that there as something where we talk about tax dollars, we talk about growth, we talk about things that really can get the state's attention. That is real. That's all my time. I appreciate all of you, and I look forward to continuing being part of this.
I want to recognize that folks' time is short tonight. So one of the ways that I'd like to deal with the many remaining questions that lots of us have is to collect them in the chat. I don't know what's going to happen on Tuesday. I'm hopeful. But if Shelter the Homeless and other groups are going to present to our community or would like to present to our community, I'd love to collect questions for them from this meeting and let them know that these are the answers that we expect. Again, I'm very sorry that they weren't able to join us tonight to answer questions. I think it's strange that folks were unprepared to answer community questions, but they are prepared to ask the state for, or indirectly, but the state for $3 million.
You're being too kind. They could have been here. This is a Zoom meeting. They could have been here if they wanted to. They've said that they will only engage with us in a dialogue until after the vote takes place, and it's too late for us to do anything.
That's a good point.
That's
Jesse.
who we're dealing with. The same people who lied to us in 2014.
How can we get
Amy,
And I still haven't gotten an answer to my question, Andrew. I still don't know why the administration didn't come to us and tell us this was happening when our mayor was on the voting committee.
And Jesse, I think that's a very valid question. I just don't think you're going to get an answer, but I love you
It's
asking the
shameful.
question.
It's absolutely shameful.
I totally agree. Okay, in terms of just bringing this to a head, it sounds like game time is at the Appropriations Committee when they decide if they're going to dole out $3 million for this crooked land deal. Can we get so Amy, how would you advise us, or can you circulate the contact information of decision makers or the link to sign up to speak at the meeting? I just want to say, like, anything we can do to stall this. I think it's ridiculous that they can use state dollars to fund this with a broker's opinion of value instead of an independent appraisal. Can we stall and get an independent appraisal? What can we do? Can we get contact information circulated? How can we stall this so that the magnitude of this error can be realized? Like, I'm eager to get involved. I guess I just don't know how to get involved. So if anything could be circulated, we'll reach out.
Can I do this? Because I have to get going too. I haven't really slept and I'm not even in my own home.
Damn it,
We're
motherfucker.
done. Cameron, do you have something? Your mic's on too. Jesse, a couple of the members of the EAC committee emailed me and because they received your email. So thank you. I haven't seen the agenda for the EAC, so it could be on the September 4th or 15th agenda, or it may not because the agenda hasn't been produced. But the best thing that you could all do is do what Jesse did today, because I had a Republican and a Democrat from the EAC committee. So let me explain what the EAC committee is. So the EAC is the Executive Appropriations Committee. The only people that serve on that committee are the leadership teams of the House Democrats, the House Republicans, the Senate Republicans, and the Senate Democrats. So there's an equal balance of Republicans and Democrats, plus there's an extra 4 members. EAC is different than a standing committee because what they do is they approve the budget. So if this is going to be in the what comes before them, what they will do is approve the funding for this. So this is where it can be stopped. And so what people need to do is they need to contact those EAC members, which are the leadership teams of both chambers. Myself and Representative Briscoe have served on EAC in the past. We don't currently, but I have been lobbying all my colleagues, the ones that will listen to me, about why I think this is a bad idea that many of you have presented today. So they do pay attention to emails because I did get
email out their contact info, their phone number and contact info. That's all I'm saying. Email it to this whole group. Email it to 100 people.
Make it simple.
They'll make it simple. They'll get 500 emails. They'll get 500 phone calls. They won't approve it.
when
Email
you
it out.
But that's not how it works. Okay. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I know we're all frustrated. Okay. I'm just as frustrated as all of you are because no one even talked to me. And I represent this neighborhood. And this happens all the time because I'm a Democrat. Sometimes they say, well, we'll just go over here to talk to the Republicans. So what I guess I'm saying is when you do your email, you want to make sure it's authentic. Like Jesse laid out some points and he talked about things because I can tell you when I personally get chain emails, I don't pay attention to them because it's just the same thing.
I didn't say chain email. I didn't say chain email. I said I want their contact info so I can draft an original email.
Can you let me finish?
But
I'm not trying to debate with you. I'm not trying to debate with you. What I'll do is I'm going to pull those emails right now and put them in the thing for everyone. I think Amy's already sent them out, but I will do that. All I'm saying is if you want people to listen to you, state the facts. Make sure it's original. That's all I'm trying. I'm just trying to give you advice. I'm on the same side here. I'm not trying to fight you here. Again, I have the other side village probably coming to my district. We had the prison come to the district. So this is not just a ballpark issue. We have issues like this on North Temple. We have issues like this in Glendale. And we're not addressing what we need to address because there's people still living on the streets. We're not looking at the social determinants of health and looking about how we house people first. So we're dealing with Band-Aid problems right now, and that's what the EAC committee will be doing. So yes, I just want people to know I wasn't involved in this process because I have a loud mouth, and if I don't agree with something, people know. So I will get you those emails.
Thank you.
Jesse Walker.
Hello, can you hear us?
Sure can.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is Mark Hoffling. Jesse Walker, my husband and I have lived in Central 9th and the Ballpark for 23 years. And we've put a lot of our lives and energy into this neighborhood. And I just want to address, I believe it was Detective Meisner. And with all respect to the detective and his very nice graphs, those statistics surely are based solely on the calls they respond to. And as a person who's lived in this neighborhood, as it's kind of gotten worse and worse and worse over the years, I know I can speak for a lot of my fellow residents in my neighborhood here across from Jefferson Park and adjacent to Jefferson Park. We've basically stopped calling the police because they essentially don't respond. Jefferson Park is, in my opinion, completely abandoned. It is a free fire zone. It is a meth and heroin dealing mecca. I could open the front door and walk out and take you out there right now to see what's going on. So I think those stats are only based on things that the police respond to, and they don't respond to anything in our neighborhood. And I know I'm frustrated about it. So if we're going to add another layer of problem onto an already overburdened neighborhood, I don't know what I'm going to confront when I open my garage door. I don't know what I'm going to confront when I open my front door. Our common garage areas are toilets and needle dumps. Our front doors are often, people from the park confronting us. So we've basically just stopped calling the police in this neighborhood, a lot of us. So I'm glad he's got his stats, but I don't think they're reflective of any sort of reality in this neighborhood. And now the city and the state want to dump even more of this on us. So that's all I'd have to say.
Soren, earlier you said that you had additional context to offer to this conversation. Would this be appropriate now, or do you want to hold on to it?
Well, if I'm going to say anything, I probably need to do it now. I'm going to be up at 2 a.m. for the point in time count, and would love to just offer a few thoughts. These are not going to be solutions.
Could you tell folks who you are first, just because maybe people don't appreciate your history in Salt Lake City politics.
Yeah, so Soren Simonson, I'm here in the context of being a steering committee member on the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. And I'm also the executive director of the Jordan River Commission. I've worked in this neighborhood, had an office here for several years, and was also part of the development team for a couple of developments, the Alinea Lofts and the Angelina's Corner. So hopefully some of you are enjoying your homes in those locations. Let me just share, this has not been on anybody's radar for very long. It was an opportunity that appeared because the Volunteers of America is looking for places to expand treatment facilities. That's a long-term goal. It's been discussed for years. It's underfunded. We need desperately funding for treatment facilities, Medicaid's expansion. Thankfully to the voters of Utah, is providing funding for some of those things to happen. So this was an opportunity that popped up because VOA found an opportunity to expand the treatment facility, and that would leave this facility vacant for some other use. There's been a long-term identification of needing overflow shelters, and that context is mostly in terms of winter overflow, but everybody that works and lives in the west side of Salt Lake knows that we have a need for shelters today, not in the winter time, but this is a solution, not this location necessarily, but these kinds of beds are desperately needed because the alternative is people are on the streets. And I know that's not what we want either. I would love to make this a productive conversation by offering maybe 3 or 4 suggestions. One is we desperately need VOA and many other providers providing detox facilities, mental health facilities, and many other things. That's something we can advocate for. They should not be located in Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City has an abundance of these already. We need to advocate to the state, and especially the State Homeless Resource Council, that we need more of those facilities and they need to be distributed. When I was serving on the city council through 2014, we had a conversation about expanding the road home. And we made a very deliberate decision with many stakeholders across the region that we were going to decentralize all of our homeless resource facilities. That has not happened yet. We split up the road home downtown and we created several other resource centers in close proximity. But it's not happening on a significant scale outside of Salt Lake City right now. That's something we can advocate for. And advocating that with city leaders isn't going to make much difference because Mayor Mendenhall and members of the city council can't do anything about having facilities in other communities. We can advocate the state and the county help take leadership and say, we need other cities stepping up to provide their share of resources and services to meet the needs that Salt Lake City almost single-handedly is meeting today. That's something we can advocate for. The last thing that I'll say is, I agree wholeheartedly. This is not a location for a shelter because there's one 3 or 4 blocks to the east, a couple blocks to the north, several blocks to the south. This community is carrying more than their fair share of, and there's other kinds of services in close proximity around Pioneer Park and elsewhere. We need more facilities. We don't need them here. And that's something we have to advocate for, but we have to advocate for those facilities that are desperately needed to meet the needs so that people aren't camping on the streets and all of the other things that we live with. In terms of this facility, if it does move forward, and that decision will be made possibly by private property owners as a private transaction that we may have very little say in. One of the things that we can advocate for is let's make this temporary overflow a temporary facility so that it doesn't exist here in 2 or 3 years. It serves a short-term need, and then it becomes something else wonderful to the neighborhood because other communities are stepping up to provide the resources they need to provide to meet the homeless needs across the entire Wasatch Front. I'm not advocating that this facility go here. Again, that's a private transaction that we may not have any say in. What I am advocating for is that if it is going to go here through a private transaction, that we can advocate and say, let's make it temporary and let's make sure that permanent facilities are going in Davis County and Utah County and Weber County, so that we don't have a need for overflow facilities any longer, because that need can be met if we advocate for things happening the way they should be happening, which is, this is a regional issue. This is a state issue. This is not a Salt Lake City issue. That may or may not be useful context. I hope maybe it gives you a little bit of additional information. I'm certainly open. I'm the public engagement representative on the Salt Lake Valley Coalition to End Homelessness. I'm discouraged we have not had that public engagement. I'm glad that it's dialogue's happening tonight. It couldn't have happened much sooner because, like I said, nobody knew about this opportunity before mid-August specifically, and we should have been out in front of it more. And but it's really helpful to hear your comments, because I will absolutely take these comments back to those that might be involved with some of these decisions going forward.
Soren,
I have to say something. Soren, there's a letter dated August 2nd in the publicly available packet recommending this go forward. That doesn't sound like mid-August to me.
I can't speak to that packet. I'm not familiar with what it is. That may have been a different, I can only speak to what information I have as part of the coalition. I can't speak to other things that are going on outside of that.
I just don't think any of us believe at all that with the investment that would go into this, that it would be a temporary facility. So I think that just is, already the whole process has the whole neighborhood distrustful. So
clearly.
We've got to stop saying that this is a private transaction. If public funds are used, it's a public project.
Public funds are used for private transactions all the time. You developed property, Jesse, in the Central 9th neighborhood. Public funds were used for many of those developments.
But if the control of those, if the control of the funds, if the control of the funds are with our state representatives, then it can be, that's what counts. This is a public process. There's an element of public process here. Just like on my projects, the city council was involved. In this case, it's our senators on the Appropriations Committee. So it's a smokescreen to say this is a private thing we can't do anything about. We can. We need to stop it at the state level. We need our city to advocate for us.
Soren, I just added the packet to the chat, and if you refer to the last page, there's a letter from October 2nd from Wayne Niederhauser, and maybe that would be helpful.
I think it would be good to hear from the last, from a couple more people who have been waiting patiently before we wrap up for the evening, since we're starting to push the 2-hour mark. Sean, you've been unmuted.
Oh, thank you. Well, first and foremost, just acknowledging everybody on the call, whether you're a property owner, whether you bought a house, or you're putting your name on the line of a development. George, James, Jesse, there's others on the call, whether you've leased a space in this neighborhood in the periphery, we're all stakeholders here. And I wanted to thank all of you for your commitment to the neighborhood, because I own a place called Water Witch, and we never would have opened the doors without the support of every one of you. And we love our neighborhood so much. It's fully supported by either tenants in your projects, property owners, people that live and work nearby. I've got a lot of my friends that I'm seeing their faces right here. So not adding so much backbone here to what we're already talking about. We've had a tremendous amount of a huge uptick in incidences. We've had everything from knife and gun incidences to we've had an axe pulled on a female employee in the back. We've had just all sorts of issues, attempted burglaries. We've cleaned up crack dens off our patio. We all have the same experience here. I want to come at this from a little bit of a different direction. It's we're all investors, right? And ultimately, we've spoken with our dollars and our feet, and people were here way before I was in the Central Ninth neighborhood. It's a very complex issue. But if anybody on this call actually believes that this overflow shelter is going to actually stop tent encampments on the Jordan River Parkway Trail, you're smoking it. It's not going to help. It's just not. I'm sorry. So let's take that out of the equation. The overflow shelter idea being sprung on us right now is totally unacceptable. It'll affect my rubric of how I invest in the community for sure. We're looking at putting a couple $1 million into another building in the neighborhood, and I don't know if I can do that now. I mean, so ultimately, whether we walk by choice or we walk by, we don't want to do that because we love this neighborhood so much. We have to stay vigilant. And everybody on this call has a stake. So one of the things I wanted to point out, just dabbling in real estate rather unsuccessfully over the years, if this closes at $3 million, which is amazing to me, that'll be $238 a square foot. It'll set the market record for a land acquisition in any part of the city outside of CBD, meaning some of the tower sites downtown traded for slightly more than this. And we're not building a 45-story tower that's going to cost $250 million. This is a boondoggle. This is a massive flip for cash. Okay, truly. It's, and whatever the dollars are coming from, looks like it's state dollars and it's public, private, whatever it is. It's complete and utter BS what's happening right now. So what I would propose is that we look at eligible sites near Niederhauser's development at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. How about the Canyon Inn? That would be wonderful, a great site for it. Listen, we've carried the city's jockstrap on this issue over and over and over again, and I think we should be done with it. And that's pretty much all I got to say.
Thank you, Sean.
Right on.
Hey, John, Allison, did you have another question? John has probably wisely stepped away for a drink. So
I apologize. I think lots of us were trying to unmute him simultaneously, and I'm part of the problem.
Fine. I don't have anything else. I mean, specifically, so I can put my digital hand down, as it were.
Okay. All right. Thanks, John. Amy, should we do some final thoughts, do you think? Kind of wrap this up. It's definitely getting into my wine time, and that is something I get irritated with. So
I respond to the notion of a temporary use of this facility. When you go and
I don't know if you need to respond, George. I don't think many people on this call think that a temporary facility is reasonable expectation for what happens in this neighborhood.
The idea of it incenses me that the $3 million could be spent on something, and God knows how much more on improvements, and it's going to last 2 years. People don't do that kind of thing. They don't flush $5 million down the toilet so that they can accommodate 2 years use of activity. It doesn't happen.
I agree. Paul, if you want to give wrap-up thoughts, that's fine with me. I'm very pleased with the engagement tonight. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for tolerating a really slapdash meeting. I'm sorry that we couldn't present some of the actual experts too, but it seems like enough people signed on the call to bring some really insightful perspectives.
Well, I thank everyone on behalf of Central Ninth for attending. I think this is kind of amazing considering we've only known about this for 2 weeks. So this is a great turnout. This is it's an amazing community, and this is why we're here. We're fighting for it. We're fighting for everyone, and we just want the best. We want the best for our neighborhoods. We want to feel safe. and we want all of you to feel safe. So there's a lot of questions about this deal. It seems very shady. And again, the engagement, we live in a city that always talks about community engagement and how important that is, and how you need to engage people on the ground level like we are doing tonight. And it's very sad when it doesn't seem like it's following that approach. So I think the city can do better. I think the state can do better. And hopefully people keep showing up and speaking.
All right, thank you for throwing some of this stuff in the chat. Oh, Angela, I think it'd be quite reasonable to.
I just want people to know that I've been working with Amy and Paul for the past 2 weeks and advising them and connecting them to people. So I want you to know that there's some of us that are elected that have our communities back. And many of you know me, like Sean, and many of you, Jesse, on this phone call know me and know that my heart's with the community. So I just want you all to know that I have been working with Amy and Paul behind the scenes and trying to get answers too. And so this is a team effort, and appreciate everyone that's on the call and holding us accountable. Because I always tell people, hold me accountable as your elected official. And I appreciate that. You did that today.
Angela, thank you. I want to say thank you. I appreciate you.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Angela, for your efforts. We do appreciate that.
And Amy and Paul and everybody that put it together.
Yeah,
Because Amy and Paul,
absolutely.
Amy and Paul, this is a volunteer position. They don't get paid for all of this work. So I really appreciate you volunteering all of your time for this.
Rock stars.
And if you haven't already, read Amy's editorial that the Salt Lake Tribune published today. It is excellent. So
Thanks, Paul. There are a lot of people on this call who helped me with suggestions, powerful statements. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for your leadership. I'm glad you guys stepped up. We needed this.
Thanks for being articulate, Jesse.
Great.
I really hope I see some of you on Tuesday on the 4th floor of our state capitol. I think it'd be great. Be there with my mask on. It's gonna be a good time.
Can we attend that? I guess I'm confused on what we can do aside from email people.
Amy,
I'm trying to unmute Angela so she can give us the lowdown.
Yes, you can attend. Those meetings are open to the public. And what's really interesting is most people don't attend EAC, which is the meeting they should be attending, because that's where that initial committee approves all the budgets for that go before the whole legislature. So yes, you can attend in person, and I will get all of that information for Amy, and she can email it out to everyone here so that you can attend in person. You can also attend virtually. So you can do whichever option you feel comfortable with.
Andrew, I'm sorry, it looks like you have some final follow-up.
No, I was going to echo thanks to Paul and Amy for your work. I will say that the preparation happens before that meeting, obviously. So the mayor's been talking to Wayne Niederhauser, who's advising that committee on this. And she's been clear with him that her support is not there anymore, and she will not let the city support that. So for what it's worth on that end, there has been communications, and I think Wayne is talking to folks. So things are happening before that meeting happens, even on Tuesday, but I would agree that's where you put your vote in as well. And I'm happy to talk offline after this meeting or whenever people would like to as well.
Thanks for reminding us about that, Andrew. I am really glad that the mayor switched her position, but it really did concern me deeply that she originally voted for this project. I hope she doesn't switch back. Yes, I have. All right. Okay, I feel like I'm officially ending this meeting. Paul, do you want to call this to a close?
Call it a night.
All right.
Good night, everyone. Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much.
Oh, wait, Scott Howell, I'm supposed to call on you. Where the heck are you? I have no idea where you even are. Somebody unmute Scott Howell. He's going to tell us something about policy that we don't understand.
Is his hand up? I don't see him.
I don't see him either.
He may
I'm
have
here.
Oh, there you are. Hi,
There you
Scott
go.
Howell.
Hey, thanks everyone. What a great group, and thank you for protecting your family, the community, and I am so impressed. I'm a former legislator, and I've served on the Executive Appropriations Committees for about 11 years when I was in office. And the secret on this so many times, and I think Representative Briscoe and Angela will agree, you need to take a solution. And the best solution that I could think of is that Shelter the Homeless Board is, I think, between $10 and $12 million in debt. So they should take that $5 million, pay down the debt, and get completely out of debt, because they'll be coming back at some point and say, we need ongoing maintenance and budget dollars. So you're much more effective when you offer a solution. And I think we live in we live in a very conservative state. And I think that will resonate with the senators and the representatives. So thank you for all that you do. You truly, you're amazing. And don't ever forget, it's they might knock you down, but they'll never knock you out. And that's kind of what I see with this group. So thank you.
All right. Pay down the debt. It's an idea. All right. I'm going to turn off the recording of this meeting. I don't know who all it's going to go to, but there have been some members of the press who are interested. Please keep your questions rolling in the comments, and then I can collect them, send them to folks who might be able to answer them someday.
Good night, everyone. Be safe.